In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a form using the Forms Squared software. So the first thing you want to do is log in using your Forms Squared user ID and password. And that will bring you to the main Forms Squared area. You've got two selections up here in the left. You've got My Forms and Administration. My Forms is where the student or the user will come to complete their forms if they choose to do it on a desktop computer. If they're going to complete it with an app, they won't use this at all. But if you select Forms, you'll see the forms that have been assigned to you, and the students can select them this way. And you'll notice with this form here, it's got a couple of sections. I'll show you how to do that in a minute, but sections are very useful, especially with larger forms, to make it easier for students to complete, to give them the information in more bite-sized chunks. But we're going to go into Administration to create the form, and that will take us to our dashboard. On the dashboard, you'll notice a number of different things. You'll notice the number of forms, submissions, users, and groups. There aren't many on this one because this is our test site. Yours will have probably a number, well, these numbers will be much larger, and you'll have a long list of forms here. On the left, you've got your four selections here and your workspaces. Workspaces, for the most part, you will probably be just using the default workspace. But if you've had a workspace created just for your forms, this is where you will go to select it. So if you've created a form and you can't find it in this list, you can probably find it by selecting one of the other workspaces. These four selections here: dashboard, where we are; forms, that's where we'll go to create the form; and then users and groups. These I will cover in another video. But for now, select forms, and this will bring you the list of forms that have already been created. If you wanted to edit a form that you've already created, you would select it here and do it that way. But because we're creating a new one, select Create Form, and then give it a title. I'm just going to call this Images. And I'm going to keep myself the owner. You can change the owner of the form, but for the most part, it's always best just to leave this as your name. And then select Save. And this will bring you to your form. You'll see a number of different selections here. Clone is a very useful feature of the Forms Squared software. If you've got a number of forms that you want to build for the students that use the same questions for the most part, rather than having to create a new form every time, you can take an old one and clone it, and then just make the specific changes to each form. It just speeds the process up. You've got a number of different selections down here. For this video, I'm just going to talk about fields. Distribution, submissions, and workflow I will talk about in other videos. And then down here you've got the status. And because the form has not been, you've not added your fields yet, don't worry about this just yet. Select fields. And this will open up a new form. Before you can add any fields to it, you need to select Edit Fields, and that will make your form live. On the left here, you'll have a number of different types of fields. You've got your section break, which I just spoke about. You've got your display fields here, text, image, and web link. And then you've got your input fields here. So whenever this is where you will collect your data. I'm going to put a couple sections in. And you'll notice right away, when you add a field, it will be surrounded by this red rectangle. This always means it's waiting for you to enter something, and you will not be able to save your form until these rectangles have gone away, until you've entered the applicable information. So for this, I'm just going to call this section, oops, that's the wrong one. Let's do section 1. Image labeling, and then select this, and we'll just call this section 2, signature. Once you've done that, you've got some other rudimentary options down here. you can make it visible, and you can also make the visibility conditional, which means that this will only be visible when another action has happened. I'm not going to go into conditionals at this point, just other than just to let you know that they are possible to use. If you've never built forms before, they can be quite tricky, so it's probably best to contact us and we can take you through it. Inside image labeling, I'm going to add some text. I'll say, please look at the image below and answer the questions. You can change the alignment of the text. It's almost always best to leave it left justified. You've got your visibility here, and then you've got a couple of other options. You can make this large text. So you've got 3 text sizes in Form Squared. You've got the regular size, which is this small one here. You've got large text, and then you've got the section text. For this, I'm just going to leave this as regular text. And then you can also include an export. Most times, if you're going to export this to a database, you don't want these sorts of fields to be sent. You only want the input fields sent, the data that the students have entered into the form. So by default, this data will not be sent. If you do want that to be included in the export, select that button there, that checkbox there. I'm going to add an image. So I'll upload an image here. I'm going to look at my desktop. And enter this image here. You've got the alignment here as well. Again, it's almost always best from a design perspective to keep it left justified, but the option to center justified or right justify is there. You've also got a heading. Both of these are optional, the heading and the descriptive text. So you've got the heading there, and this is where your descriptive text will appear. Got your visibility condition, and then you've got your include in the export. Again, I wouldn't include this in the export either. You have the ability to add web links. In this case, I'm going to just do the BBC website for display purposes. You want to make sure you put the HTTP when you do this. And again, your alignment and your visibility, and you can also make this large text if you want. And I'm not going to do that. Once you've created you've put some display fields in, you can now enter your questions about these images. And before I do that, you'll see these 3 little images up, 3 little graphics here. The X, obviously, to delete it. You can move them around if you want this to go underneath. You can move it into that section if you want. I'm going to move it back. And you can also clone it. So if you want 2 of them, you can do it that way. I'm just going to delete that for now. It just makes building your form faster. Your input fields are here. You've got your text box and text area. The only difference between a text box and a text area is a text box is 1 line and a text area is more than 1. And a scroll bar will come up if you put in more text than what the text area can support. So I'll just do this. Now, the only difference between this and the visual fields, the display fields, is that you have this other one called system name. When you enter your system name, each one of these has to be unique within this form. So you can't have 2 with the same name. And if you do try to have 2 with the same system name, the red rectangle will stay and you will not be able to save your form. For this, I'm just going to put question 1. And there's no spaces either. And I'm going to... So if you enter the question there, your descriptive text, which is the same as the image, will come up underneath. You don't really need to enter that because it is optional. You can also have your default value there. And you can your visibility, read only, and you've got your required section here. So if these fields are mandatory, you want to select always for required. And most times when you're doing a survey, most of the fields will probably be required. But it is never by default. Now if you want this, if this was say a password field and you don't want to see the letters, that's what this masked section does here. So you'll see the letters turn into dots. But I'm going to leave that for now because it's not a password. Okay, so then I'll add a text area. And like I say, it's just the same as a text box. The area is just bigger. I'll call this question 2. Okay, you've got your descriptive text. I'm going to leave that now because you know what that does. And visibility, read only, required. We'll make that required as well. And then you've got a character limit option here. So if you select that and say, I only want 100 characters, you'll see that that will appear on the bottom there. Then you've got your drop-down box. Again, these are fairly self-explanatory. Let's try question 3. Title is Mrs. Goff's job important? And then you can put your options here. The answer to this, by the way, is yes. You've got your visibility, read only, and we'll make that required as well. Then you can add some radio buttons or some checkboxes. The main difference between the two is a radio button will only allow the user to select one answer. The checkbox will allow them to select one or more. So I'll just put a radio button in there. And we'll call this question 4. You'll see that if you do try to use the same system name, it goes red and it won't let you use it. So you want to use question 4. Uniform. Black. Visibility, you've got your read only, and we'll make that required as well. And you can see that it actually populates this even in the edit field when you're editing the form. Checkbox. Call this question 5. We'll say you've got the same thing again. Now, as you can see, you can select as many as you like here when the student is completing this. We'll make that required as well. Now, if you make a checkbox field required, you have to select how many responses you want from the student. It won't allow them to submit the form until they've done the number of responses that you require. However, if you are too specific, you'll give away how many responses you're looking for. For most cases, you'll just say 1. So it'll allow them to submit it if they've only selected 1, but even though there are 2 correct answers here. You've also got a couple of others. You've got a date picker and a time picker. These are fairly self-explanatory as well. I'm just going to call this date, make it required. And when they select these, they'll be able to either enter them or there'll be a calendar feature when you publish the form that they can just select the date. And again, you've got time as well, and this does the same thing. Time. I'll make that required as well. If you want the student to upload an image, you can do that you can enter that here. We'll call this image upload. Oops. Might use. Okay, make that required. And then when they select choose image, it will open up a folder, a browser, so that they can find an image on their computer or online as well. You've also got a sound recorder. If they want to open, this will open up a sound recorder. If you want them to actually create a bit of audio, they can do that. When they select open recorder, it will open it up, but they'll need a microphone, and they'll be able to actually answer the question with their own voice. I'm going to call this recorder. Give it a title. Okay. Make it required. And then you've got a maximum duration. Now, when you create a text area, the character limit is optional, but here the max duration is mandatory. And you want this to be fairly small, because the files can be quite big. So I'm just going to say 20 seconds. And again, recording is only supported in the mobile app. That's the only place where the recorder will come up. So if they're doing this on their desktop, it won't work. So you keep that in mind. If your students have iPads or any kind of mobile device, they'll need that in order to use the recorder. And once you've added all that, we'll go to the section 2, signature. And this is just a signature box. I'm going to call it signature. And I'm not even going to put a heading or a descriptive text, because we've already said signature in the header, in the section break, sorry. And you'll notice that there's no required option here, because whenever you put a signature, it's always required. When you publish this form, if they're doing it in the app, they can actually use their finger on their mobile device to sign in that field. And if they're doing it on the desktop, they can do it with the mouse. Okay? So that's basically how you create a form. Once you're finished, don't forget to hit save. So once you've saved your form, you now want to publish it. So if you select status, if you've got administrative access, you'll have this button here. This is update status, and you'll be able to publish it yourself. Once you do publish it, this will go out to students if you've got any students assigned to this, or if you've distributed it already. If you're not an administrator, you will only have this button here, this request approval, which means you want to select someone who does have administrative access to approve your form for you. In this case, I'm just going to select it for me. I'll say and select submit. Then you'll see here the status down here will appear. Once this has been approved and published, it will go live to the students.